Hi, welcome to the Meeting of Minds podcast. I'm Philippa, the host. You're very welcome here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to listen, to watch, however you are consuming this podcast. Welcome. And just before I get started, if you want to know anything more about the work that I do with people, please go to my website, which is safeandsupported.co.uk. At the time of recording this, September 2022, the website is due a bit of an overhaul, because the way that I'm working with people is much more in groups now. But please head over to the website and you can find out about my book. Obviously, you know about the podcast because you're here, and the other work that I do. So today I wanted to talk about something that came up when I was a guest on a podcast. I think I recorded it a couple of weeks ago now, but it has stuck in my mind. And we were talking about healing from trauma. And, you know, there is a lot of chaos and trauma in my in my childhood, in my, adulthood as well. And I have done a lot of healing work over the last 5 years to help me live with what has happened to me, see the strength, see the power perhaps in coming to terms with some of the things that have happened in my life, and also to work on not being limited by what has happened in my life as well. And I was talking about a lot of these things on this podcast, and the host said to me, oh, there are so many layers there. So many layers of things that have happened, of trauma, of, things that happened to me at really key developmental stages in childhood that actually make it quite understandable how some of the things showed up in my adult life. And it was this idea of layers that really intrigued me and has got me thinking. Now, I'm sure if you have done any work in the personal development area, you will have heard the analogy of an onion and working through the layers of an onion, so peeling off another layer. And that analogy is used a lot for healing journeys, personal development journeys, personal growth, that sort of, bit by bit, we peel a layer off. And it's funny because when this lady said to me about layers, I didn't really think about an onion, but, clearly that's where the analogy comes from. I think for me, it's sort of worked out much more. I kind of want to say cake, the layers, multi-layers of a cake, but then anybody who knows anything about my story with food will, it's quite amusing that I've gone straight to cake. So sitting here thinking about what other analogy is there, I think I'm perhaps leaning more towards layers of stone and earth, and how they form over the years. So I am not an historian or into biology or any of those things, but I believe once the world was covered in water, and then did the plates shift and create mountains? And actually, that is really rubbish. I don't know anything about it, but we all sort of know that the reason we know things about many millions of years ago is because of fossils found in stone, which were formed over the years as those animals died, and their remains were covered and squashed down by all the layers that came on top. So, you know, level, and if you cut, I don't know, in some areas, like I was in Dorset recently, and in some areas along the coast, you can really see the layers of different coloured stone and earth in the exposed cliff faces. So for me, my journey, my healing journey started when it felt a little bit like a volcano erupting for me. So I had suppressed all my fears, worries, shame around the things that had happened in my past, and I had squashed them down because it was too painful to look at them. It was too exposing. It made me feel too vulnerable, because I think mainly because I didn't have a safe space to explore those things and to understand, as I do now, that what happened in my childhood was not my fault, and it's not because I wasn't good enough. It was very much about the adults in my life and then reacting to the things that had happened in their life and sort of passing it down in their behaviours and the way they were as parents or other adults in my life. That sort of gets passed down the generations, and that's what we talk about. That's what we mean when we talk about generational trauma. And when you get to somebody in the generational line who decides that they don't want to, that they recognize that trauma is being passed down the line, and they don't want to do that by passing it down their line any further, then that person in that position, in that role, is what we call a generational pattern break. Different descriptions, although I can't think of any off my top of my head, but that's what we call a generational pattern breaker. And I wasn't aware that that is what I was doing, but that is indeed what I am doing. I have done, and I'm still doing a lot of my own growth and personal development work so that I can try my best to pass on to my children as little of the generational trauma that has come down to me, so I can pass on as little as that as possible. It is absolutely probable that I will pass some of it on, and have done, because I've only, apart from anything else, you know, it's kind of a lifetime work. And also because I only became aware and conscious of what has been going on in me in the last 5 years, and I'm still working on it, and my children are now teenagers. So it is absolutely probable that I have passed some things on, but all I can do is my best to recognize, recognize the part that I might have played in that for them, to help them recognize it in themselves, to help them get help at a time that they might want to get help, and so that it doesn't take them into their 40s to address it like it took me. So back to layers. So I lost a lot of sight in my right eye in 2017, and amongst other things, that started an unraveling for me, a real dive into what had brought me to the place that I found myself in 2017, emotionally, as well, emotionally, spiritually, as well as physically, and mentally, and all those things. And it wasn't pretty. It was very layered. And the first thing that really happened was this feeling that had been growing in me, inside me, deep down in my belly, of like hot fire, anger. It felt like it erupted. It felt like it just blew. And I'd been suppressing that for over 40 years, and it blew big time. And everything sort of came spewing out, as it does when a volcano erupts. And it really feels to me that over the years, suppressing it and pushing it down, both steadfastly refusing to look at it, so in a way almost pushing it, my thoughts pushing it down, like, no, I'm not going there, I'm not going to look at it, it's not safe. There's no safe place for me to look at this, but it's not safe because there's nobody to support me, nobody's going to be interested, people are going to leave me, and nobody will want to be around me if they know quite what a mess I am. You know, all those thoughts were sort of keeping the emotions down, as well as the food that I had consumed, because I definitely had binge eating disorder and used food to suppress my emotions. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. I can only see that now. But I had kept everything down, and it's like layers had built up. You know, if we think right at the bottom, we had, you know, baby stuff, and then, you know, and then slightly older, and you know, and as things happen, they just all got layered on top of each other. And the podcast host said this to me as I was describing to her that in my childhood, you know, I felt I came into this world not particularly wanted, and in some regression sessions that I've had, I definitely have that feeling in my core that I wasn't wanted from the day I was born. You know, I won't know whether that's true. My mum is no longer here, nor is my dad. Or I wasn't wanted by my mum. I mean, my mum was ambivalent to it. She wanted a baby and didn't want a baby. So it was very, you know, there was two sides to it. So there was definitely some feelings around there that I picked up on. Then, you know, there were a couple of instances in my early childhood that made me quite scared of my mum. And then my dad left when my mum and dad split up. I didn't know what I know now about the situation at the time, but I just knew that my dad, who I loved dearly, left, and I didn't know why he'd left. I didn't know, after a few years, why we didn't see him anymore. I didn't know any of those things, and I felt abandoned by him. And also I was left with a mother who I didn't feel really wanted me. I had 3 brothers in the end. My mum then remarried, and I didn't feel safe in that home, because I was a reminder of the first marriage, and I didn't feel safe, I didn't feel secure, I didn't feel wanted. So, you know, there are layers piling up here, and then there have been layers that have been added on top of there with the pressure of my career and whether I could, you know, things that went on there, things that have gone on in relationships since. I mean, it's just layer upon layer upon layer, I'm afraid. And the reason for me wanting to talk about this today is that I want to sort of bust the myth, if there is a myth, and I believe there is, that we can just, you know, if we have things that have informed our behaviour, and those things come from the past. I think I've had plenty of people tell me that they have just been told to forget the past, forget it's there, pretend it's not there, and just think about now. Just concentrate on now and concentrate about what's coming. And on one hand, I applaud that, because living in the past is, will definitely keep us stuck. But there is a whole layer in our now, in our present, that we've brought forward with us, the way that we behave, the way that we react, the way our thought patterns work in certain situations. And it's not quite so easy as either a mindset change or an affirmation or just blocking it out. Because the more we block it out and try and pretend it's not there, the louder and bigger it gets. There is, in my experience, there is no getting away from the past. And the way forward is to embrace the past. Embrace the past as in, look at it, understand it, see the good in it as well as possibly the not so good. And to all of you who are listening, who are resonating with this, I am really sorry about the things that have happened to you in the past, and you deserve better. You deserved better then. You deserve better now. And I firmly believe that by embracing the parts of you that have lived through the past and working out what you needed at those times and didn't get, finding a way of giving those things to yourself, helps you bring a much more whole version of yourself into the now, and then obviously into your future. And we do that, embracing the past, by working through the layers. There is not just you can go to a therapist, a coach, a healer of some other description. This is what I believe, that there is no just find the right person, go to them for 6 months, do the work, and it's done. It's just not that easy. And I wish it was. I really wish it was that easy. But also, in a way, it's taken a long time for most of us who need to do this work to get to the place where we have all this work to do. It's not going to be unravelled and put back together in a different order, or however you want to think about it. It's not going to happen that quickly. And it's like that for a reason, because we need to process it. We need to feel into it. We need to live in this new place that we find ourselves, with new understanding and new wants and desires and wanting to behave in different ways. We need to live with that for a while. We need to embrace it. We need to work out what that feels like, what it looks like, how it's going to work for us moving forward. And we can only do that slowly and steadily. And that's why it has to happen really in layers. I don't think there's any you have to work through it in chronological order, or you have to do it in a certain order, or any of that, because I definitely have not done that. I've gone all over the place. Yeah, I have gone all over the place. And I'm still learning things. I'm still having to work out how things are affecting me now. And if I can be completely honest with you, I do struggle a little bit in the now, working out whether a reaction I'm having is based on me now, or whether it's still based on a me from the past. And I mean, I don't dwell on it too much. I don't overcomplicate it, but I don't always know. But what I do is acknowledge the way I'm feeling, and acknowledge that it might be a pattern, and sort of work from that place. If I have identified a behavior or a pattern or something that actually I would like to work on. And you know, a really live piece for me at the moment, my work is I've got lots of different bits of work, and you know, I'm getting a bit busier, which is really great, and I'm getting a lot busier in some areas, and I'm really it's a struggle for me to try and maintain the level of commitment to each of these parts that I want. I am committed to them all, but I'm finding I'm really stretched a little bit thin sometimes, and that is a pattern that I'm used to. I have a tendency to people please and overachieve and want to do all the things, and I'm really having to work on, actually, can I do this, or am I doing too much? And partly I work quite well under a bit of pressure. Have I yet identified where that pressure gets too much? Don't know, working on it. I definitely know when it's got too much. It's that bit in the middle of when it's getting too much and how quickly I can identify it. I'm still working on that. It's a lifelong journey, I think, when you start on a healing path and personal development. And it's a wonderful journey. It's of self-discovery and just being really interested in how to find that true and best version of yourself that you can bring into the world as often as possible. So I've talked a lot about layers, and I think, the message that I want to give you today is that starting on a healing journey can sometimes feel too big. And how on earth do you start? And my answer to that is you start slowly and in little steps. I think it's all about expectation. Don't expect it to be fixed in 3 or 6 months. When I first went to therapy, I thought, I'll give it 3 months. Gosh, what did I know? Knew nothing, didn't I? But start slowly, start in small steps, start in a way that feels right to you. So that might be with support, it might be doing it by yourself, it might just be reading a book or two and processing the things that you read in that book. It might be listening to a podcast. You're listening to this one, so you're already interested in what this work is like, because you're here listening. You're doing the work anyway, I should imagine, even though if you don't realize you are. And also start slowly, start in small steps, and also know that there are moments of great joy to come, great freedom. There will be moments of those along the way. And even, the best advice that I can give people who are doing their own personal work is, when it seems too hard to carry on, that you're on the verge of something, then you're on the brink of something, and that is really the time to dig in and stick with it. And sometimes that's the time to get support if you haven't had support before. Sometimes that's the time to just back off a little bit, because we can also do too many things and be doing all the work, and actually it's a bit much, and we need to back off sometimes to let it process, to let our so we can process it, and we can bring it into our body, feel it, learn more about that bit before we move on to the next bit. It's all layered, and enjoy each layer as it goes, and see how you are progressing. Please take time to look back and see how you are progressing, rather than think how far you've got to go. Enjoy that moment of, I don't know, that moment you realise you've reacted differently in a situation, or you've stood up for yourself perhaps when you're not used to that, or you've said no when you would normally say yes. You've put a boundary in place and stuck to it. Really recognise those moments and celebrate those moments, because they are real progress. They really are. Okay, I think that's time to stop today, because anybody who's listened to quite a few of my episodes will know I can talk a lot. So that is enough for today. Enough layers. I hope this has been useful. Let me know. I'd love to know what you think after you've listened to this episode. If you can remember to find a way to send me a message, I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, take good care of yourself, and I'll be back soon with another episode. Okay, take care. Thank you for listening to the Meeting of Minds podcast. You can find this podcast in all the usual places. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe. And if you have a moment, I'd be really grateful if you could rate and review, as it helps other people find us and helps me spread the messages of empowerment and positivity that I'm really passionate about. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit my website, www.safeandsupported.co.uk. Until next time, bye.